All right, Scott, let's start with Colby Plus, our good friend Rob Colby and his beautiful wetsuits made out of Yamamoto rubber.
Yeah, man, it's a great time of year to have a warm full suit, and thank God for Colby Plus. Super buttery, warm. Uh, it's just a great wetsuit, David. I know you have some other adjectives to describe it, but it's just a go-to suit for me, and it has been for a couple of seasons now.
The improvements for Colby over previous brands is did my camera just go away?
It did. Your
I
camera's
don't know what
gone. Now it's back.
I don't know what's gonna that's gonna keep happening, I think. I'm not sure what's wrong. The improvement with Colby has been fit, like materials, anybody can use good materials, but the fit is just right. Like once it's on, it's as snug as a wetsuit that would have been previously difficult to get out of. But this one, I can still get out of it on my own. It's not a straight jacket when I get out of the water. So that is what I really appreciate about it. But yeah, check them out. It's direct to consumer, so they're inexpensive. Cut out the middleman. Go to colbyplus.com for warm and comfortable wetsuits. And then Real Water Sports, of course, is our retail partner that has a 1,500 surfboard inventory and anything that you would need for any water sport.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the thing about real water sports, right? It's pretty much, well, it is a one-stop shop. So when you're in need of new foil gear, new surfboard gear, new kiting gear, new wake gear, new suits, new full suits, new clothes, like board shorts, like hard goods, fins, leashes, Real Water Sports is like I said, one-stop shop.
And down home, Southern hospitality and customer service as well. I have a friend who bought a board from them recently, and they were sending him photos of them packing the board, shipping the board, just so he could get little teasers along the way. So even though it's online, it feels like a in-person experience.
I had a friend that visited Real Water Sports recently and had an excellent plate of biscuits and gravy.
Got
I mean,
That's
it's
perfect.
some down home Southern hospitality, man.
Man, I'm jealous. I want to go.
However, they do have an insane restaurant there. Really
That's true.
tasty.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
As we see some movement at the takeoff zone, it's Kelly Slater grabbing rail.
Yeah, guy. Yeah, friggin' guy, David. Yeah, guy. Oh my goodness. It is the 27th of December. We witnessed last week an incredible swell event that brought huge waves to Hawaii, of course, and into the Northeast Pacific corridor here, California, and all the way down. So, man, oh man, what a week of swell and content, pretty much like we called it last week. Good morning, David Lee Scales.
Good morning, Scott William Bass, and Merry Christmas.
Yes, Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas.
Is that your new cashmere in green?
Yeah, man.
I'm used to seeing the gray one, but the green matches your AG1 hat beautifully.
Yeah, we've got the olive. Speaking of, what are your thoughts on olive oil? I went down an olive oil rabbit hole the other day and I purchased some olive oil that has an abundance of, I think it's polyphenols,
Okay.
and I'm I've been convinced that I should take a shot of olive oil every night before bed. What are your thoughts? Give me some insight. Back me up.
I'm a big fan of olive oil and absolutely like you should spend time and money to get a good one. I don't know all of the health benefits. I have heard things similar to what you're talking about, and I'm curious to know more. I haven't fully bought in,
Yeah.
but it's funny. I received a gift last week for the holidays that was olive oil. I wish I had the bottle. It's downstairs, but it's like almost looks like a perfume bottle. It's so
Is
beautiful.
it white?
It's not one that you've seen because it came directly from Spain from a small producer, so it's not available here. But
Right.
just opening the package, I was like, "Oh my God, this thing's incredible!" But I have a buddy whose kid is out of the house now, and he doesn't work anymore, and so he spent 3 months in Spain. They'll let you stay for 89 days, so he stayed 89 days riding his bike and stuff. And phenomenal life experience, but and he's really into wine. So he was visiting wineries too, but he said the best visit was going to this particular olive oil producer. Girona is the town in Spain that he was in. So if anybody knows the area, knows olive oil, they might know the one that I'm talking about. But as a gift, he brought back olive oil for me and our other buddies. And I did. My first sample of it was just with a spoon. It's totally drinkable by itself. It's
Yeah.
delicious. And
Yeah.
I'm afraid to use it for cooking. I want to
I know.
only
It's too good.
only use it as a drizzling thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I got. So I got some olive oil for Christmas as well. And I literally received the kind that you take a shot of it before bedtime. And
So
the guy was
what
like, "Yeah, you can brush your teeth with it. It's good for snoring." It's like, of course, it has all these incredible gastrointestinal benefits as well. So, um,
what is the benefit? What's the sales pitch?
well, I'm going to butcher it, but I would urge you to just Google olive oil and polyphenols.
Okay.
And apparently, all this particular type of olive oil is high in polyphenols, and it does something so that it helps to digest your food better, and it also stems your appetite a little bit.
Hmm.
Not that you and I are fat or anything, but it's just a more productive breakdown and digestion of your food. Again, I'm probably butchering the benefits. I went down a rabbit hole and I can't even seem to summarize it here for you
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it just went like big words and a lot of biology that I kind of went over my head. But I was
The
like, I don't care if I don't understand it. I'm buying it.
On the most like mechanical level,
Yeah,
it's lubricant. It makes
exactly.
sense. It makes sense if you lubricate everything and then you eat food, it's going to be lubricated through the system. Seems to work better.
Yes.
So
All right.
awesome.
We're in an olive oil moment here. Um, well, let's see. Where do you want to start? I mean, we've got sort of overriding the entire show is this big swell event that is occurring, has occurred, and continues to occur. Massive surf here in California, as I mentioned, and of course at Peahi and Waimea Bay. And frankly, right now, today, David, Friday the 27th, the North Shores of the Hawaiian Island chain are under a massive surf alert as there's huge surf again slamming those coastlines. So, man, it's been crazy, right? The amount of content and the amount of footage. We could start with the Eddie and do a quick breakdown there. The
It
Eddie
doesn't
did
doesn't
go.
doesn't even need to be quick.
Okay, good. It was an incredible event, in my opinion. I've boiled it down into sort of bite-sized chunks of discourse. What was great, what was good, and what was not so good. And if you want, David, I'll begin with what was great, and we can go from there. I'll bring something up. You can comment. You ready? What was great, David? The swell. The swell was great. It filled in fast and furious. Heat 2 was, of course, a bit slow, but the swell was immense and gnarly and closing out the bay on occasion, which is what you want. You and I speculated last week that the swell might not arrive in time on Sunday, that it might be a Sunday evening through Sunday night thing and make it difficult to run. The meat of the swell missing the daytime hours, and it was questionable early on in the morning when they were making the call. But hats off to Clyde Aikau and Liam McNamara for calling it on. They saw what was happening on the buoys. There was no doubt the swell was arriving, and it was mind-blowingly massive and difficult and dangerous Waimea Bay. The swell was great.
Uh, Phenomenal. I feel like you're almost underselling it a little bit. Like this, we could have just uh, come out of the top of the show effusively fanning out about this. This feels to me like the greatest sporting event on the planet. And I know I'm influenced because of I love surfing. Not everybody does, but I still feel like that aside, this is spectacular. And it's everything that we love about surfing. And it's because of what you've stated for a decade now, the waves are the stars. So when you see this swell coming a week in advance or longer, and we're discussing it on here a week in advance, all of that anticipation of Sure, anything can happen and maybe it won't, but good God, it looks like it's going to be memorable, And so then you wake up and, the highway is gridlocked at 3 a.m. with people trying to get there. Like I wasn't there in person, but I can feel that energy. And then the lights come up, and sure enough, the swells arrived and it's getting bigger and it's going to peak in the middle of the day. All of that anticipation sets the stage for drama. And the way that the bay is kind of oriented is an amphitheater. And so there's rocks on either side with huge explosions of white water. And then out in the middle, there's sets closing out the bay, tremendous, treacherous shore break that you have to get through to get out into the lineup, skis buzzing around. It is cinematic. It's out of the movie. You couldn't script it. And so and then the other element about this particular event is you have non-pros who then end up winning the event. Luke Shepardson last time being a lifeguard who was on duty, that story we talked about ad nauseum, but and it's like, how could you ever replicate or beat that? There's kind of no way to, except this year kind of didn't beat it, but it certainly lived up to the legacy of the event. And so all of that, the players come to play and they're not all pros. That is all the drama you could ever hope for in a sporting event. And so I really felt watching it throughout the day, and it was a beautiful day. That's the other thing. It was sunny, the waves were beautiful, the winds cooperated. So I just felt watching it like, wow, this is better than the Super Bowl. It's better than any other sport, better than a heavyweight bout. Like this is the greatest sporting event on the planet.
Yeah, the swell was great, and that made this event great. What else was great, David? The rides, the actual rides, of course. These guys, basically riding mountains of water. Luke Shepardson, Nathan Florence, of course, the winner, Landon McNamara, Jamie O'Brien, Nick Lamb got an incredible wave, JoJo Roper. The judges were looking for steep, deep, committed drops and the ability to then negotiate that cascading sort of voluminous quantities of sheer power being dumped on the surfers' heads and shoulders. And so the rides, because the swell was so immense, those surfers that you mentioned there, they lived up to their duties. And so the rides were great. The swell was great, and the rides were great.
Well, steep and deep. When you watch Jaws, especially with these drone angles that we get nowadays, you could see the wave coming from a long way away, and the paddle surfers, can identify that and get a pretty good trajectory in. They get a lot of opportunity to paddle and catch the wave. At Waimea, it's not always the case. You have these things that lurch, and there was a crazy wipeout with Mark Healy and Ian Walsh on the shoulder, and they both ate it. It really looked like Healy just kind of spun and went. Like there wasn't even a lot of paddling. He just was the wave. He was in a little bit inside the wave, kind of popped up. He spun around and went, and the thing lurched and he ate it. And with Landon's wave as well, I don't know how many strokes he got before he went on that thing. It didn't seem like a lot. And so that then requires you to be late to go steep, to be deep to go steep, and just get to your feet and get that kind of free fall moment. And it makes Waimea stand out from anywhere else on the planet, really. It's not a perfect wave.
Yeah, you bring up probably the greatest point about the quality that is Waimea Bay. The drop, this 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 absolute need to sit underneath it when everything in your body is saying paddle further outside.
Yeah.
And just the way that wave, it just kind of comes in, the bay fills up with water. And so there's this kind of churning effect that you don't see at Peahi, which is just groomed and perfect and running across. And that makes it so that the real professionals, the guys that have put in their time out there, the Landon McNamara's, all the guys that are in the event, they know, hey, I've just got to sit here and turn and take 4 strokes and good luck to me. We even saw John Florence knowing that, hey, to win this event, I'm going to actually take off and get tubed on the drop. And of course, he didn't make a couple of the ones that he tried to do in that fashion. But man, the rides were amazing. Of note, and I mentioned that what the judges were looking for, because a couple of guys rode the wave all the way through to the inside and went for that Bruce Irons moment where they went left and stood up in the shore break. And it does not appear that the judges were necessarily rewarding that. And I think in some regards that's kind of good. I think that Waimea Bay is a right. And yeah, you can go and certainly be committed and get hurt on that left on the inside and have that moment right in front of the fans. And I think the fans really enjoy it. You know, it's obviously a moment there, but it feels as if the judges, and I think even the broadcasters mentioned that, look, the judges might not be rewarding that little last section as much as you might think. So it was about the outside wave, which is what Waimea Bay is about.
It's there's an analogy here with pipeline where, look, if you get a 10-point ride on the barrel, it really doesn't matter what you do on the inside. And that's kind of the idea, I think. Like Landon McNamara's perfect ride. If he went on the inside and got the shore break tube, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Or if there was somebody who got 80% of Landon's ride and then went inside and got a 20% of the barrel, is that as good as Landon's ride? It's not. So it really does. The points focus on the drop.
Yeah.
But I have a question for you. Made me in the past when we've watched WCT events, I would argue that when somebody completes a maneuver, that that's where their score should be locked in. If the wave then, if the whitewash comes and sweeps them out a few seconds later, it doesn't matter. They already completed the maneuver and should get the score. But when I watched Landon McNamara's perfect ride, he does make the drop, and then there's an additional explosion of water that easily could have knocked him out or knocked him off his board. And I was in that moment wondering if or not he was going to make it. And I thought, well, he already completed the drop and he deserves a score at this point. But the fact that he then rode out of the whitewash explosion additionally made me realize, like, wow, that actually does matter. And that was solidified the score. Like now there's no question. But being able to ride the wave to completion, I guess, rather than just complete the maneuver, still has value.
Yeah. So I guess you answered your own question.
He
um,
would I would have given him the score without doing that, but the fact that
I
he
don't
does
know. I
that
think,
then
I think,
solidifies it.
I think that that's kind of what they're looking for. They're looking for the big drop, and they're looking for the surfers to be able to negotiate that big explosion. And do they come out and raise their hands? I think that's a big part of it. How I guess Dave Shipley was the main judge or the head judge. How they decided amongst themselves how that's going to play out regarding scoring, I'm not sure, but it's obvious that you have to make the wave, and Landon's wave was incredible. Personally, my favorite wave of the event was Luke Shepherdson's wave early on in the event. Really, the first big set that came through that everyone, okay, the swell's here. And you mentioned sort of the churning, the motion of the bay, all that water filling up the bay, and how it affects the boil and the drop, and of course that angle was the best angle, especially early on the, I guess, the east side of the bay, looking west toward Kaina Point with the sun not quite yet in your eyes. So it was perfectly set up for, backlit, and all the water sort of pushing up, and you're like, oh my God, that is such a steep drop. And Luke Shepherdson had that moment. It was just it really shows you the enormity of the wave, that angle. And wow. So that was one of my favorite waves. Of course, Landon's wave was next level. And quite a few guys had large waves from that angle, maybe not as steep or maybe not as much whitewater to negotiate. Nick Lamb had one. Jojo Roper comes to mind. Of course, Nathan Florence comes to mind. And I'm sure I'm leaving out quite a few guys. But the rides were incredible. They were great. You know what else was great, David? The
Hmm.
beachside interviews. I thought Chris Latronic did a great job. He's obviously a professional. He works with KHON Channel 2 as a reporter, and you could tell that he had a real ease The way that he carried himself, his deportment with the interviewees was incredible. And what was neat is that we got to meet people that just frankly we don't know. Joey Cadiz, I don't know who he is. Ben Wilkinson, I sort of know who he is, but we got to get closer to some of these athletes that you mentioned. These are not necessarily pros in the sense that you and I know from the WSL standpoint. And so Chris Latronic bringing these athletes closer to us through these beachside interviews, which frankly are needed because of a lot of downtime between sets. And so I thought the beachside interviews were great.
Totally agree. And that highlights one of the things that I appreciated about this event was just the unsung chargers of the Eddie. And the reality is there's unsung chargers at all these big wave spots at every swell whose names you and I will never know. They just work regular jobs, but they put in the time and they're out there. So getting to know them a little bit is great. On that list, I mean, Chad Keolana, I don't know. Aaron Gold, I know he got a huge wave in the past, but I've never really gotten to know who Aaron Gold is. But he was an invitee. Um, Tyo Shipman, there's just a bunch of them, who are out there who could easily win the event. They're totally qualified to win the event. I know I made the opposite argument during the Pipe Masters where I was like, look, who are all these names? It's the Pipe Masters. There should be masters competing in this event. But that is kind of a different thing. This is, I mean, on any given swell, it's a non-famous server's name who gets the wave of the day. And so I think that this event is designed perfectly to honor who are actually the chargers out there at the event.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that makes it kind of charming. Um, what else was great, David, was the heat recap. After each heat, the guys at KHON put together each and every wave that was ridden back to back to back to back, which was very helpful, right? For sort
Totally.
of re-understanding what just went down over the past 45 minutes. So the heat recap was great. And of course, I mentioned the surfers. I'll just go through who won. Landon McNamara completely disappeared. Huge set wave. You mentioned it already. He was engulfed by multiple swimming pools of water, unloading on him a dump truck of power, and somehow he escaped. And it was one of those ways where you went, he's gone. Like there's no way. A couple seconds went by, and oh my God, he emerges, and you're just like, holy shit, that's amazing. And I really think that ride in particular sort of captured the spirit of Eddie Aikau, this man against nature thing. And Mason Ho, I think, got second place. Billy Kemper, I believe, got third. Not sure how the rest of the rundown went. Nathan Florence's YouTube channel said that he got fifth, but he was, I guess, announced as seventh, and there was some confusion there. So I don't want to butcher the actual results, but Nick Lamb, Luke Shepardson, Nathan Florence, Kai Lenny, Koa Rothman. I think that rounded out the top surfers in the event based on scoring. Best wave went to Landon McNamara. And of note, the Mark Foose Spirit Award went to Greg Long, who announced prior to his surfing that this would be his last Eddie. And in fact, for his second heat, I think he gave up his spot and let somebody else paddle out in his spot. And I'm not sure who that was. It might have been one of the females. I'm not positive.
I think so too. And it's funny, I actually looked on the Eddie's website this morning to get a list of the winners, and they don't have it listed. Or not the winners, but the final rundown.
You know who the unofficial winner is, according to me,
I
is
would,
yeah,
I would love to
Nolan
know.
Nolan Kealana, a Hawaiian water patrolman who was on the ski, who got a lot of play from the broadcasters, as they mentioned and watched him do his work. He was just out there like a beast that he is. I've um, I've actually I've been able to I surfed in some heats with Nolan a long time ago at Makaha. He's of course from the west side, and a long time ago there was this event called the Ku Aikaika Challenge, which is a stand-up paddleboard big wave event at Makaha Point, and I got to compete and meet Nolan and compete against Nolan, and he is just this huge, massive man. Like he is just a large Hawaiian, big, powerful, strong, and he's just very low key, just very. Um, I think others would be able to better characterize Nolan than me, but if I was to suggest to you that there's one Kealana that sort of reminds me of Buffalo Kealana, it's Nolan Kealana. He's very quiet and unassuming and filled with just a stature. He's just sort of, he's just a large Hawaiian man with humility. And I just think Nolan's sort of the unofficial winner because of the way that the broadcasters, Kaipo and Dave Wassel, spoke about Nolan as they watched him do his magic and be sort of the figurehead of that, what seemed to be a very difficult time for those guys on skis, the ski drivers. There it was just a lot of fury that they had to deal with. It wasn't like an easy day on a sunny Waimea Bay, Hawaiian Beach Patrol day.
Well, I think as a viewer, you can be lulled into a false sense of security because they are so good at their jobs, and you see people have what look like death-defying wipeouts, and they just pop up and paddle away. But the reality is, uh, Ross Clark Jones, almost lost his hand. He got 30 stitches in his hand. Laura Enever, um, her board punctured her leg. She ended up in the hospital. She's spent, I think, 4 days in the hospital. The wipeout of Mark Healy that I mentioned, that team got in there and rescued him right after that wave. He ended up going to the hospital. So I'm sure those aren't the only three. Those are the three that I have on off the top of my
I think
head. But
Ian Walsh maybe was injured too during
was
that
he?
same wave. I believe so. Again, I'm not positive.
Yeah. So it is scary. And without the patrol, there would be a lot more, you know, tragedies. So,
Yeah. So those are the things that were great to me. What was good on my list, I just have really one thing, and that was the broadcast from KHON2 Studios. Kaipo Guerrero and Dave Wassel there in Honolulu were our commentators and gave analysis. And of course, the beach interviews with Crystal Latronic I mentioned were great. These guys only had a few days to pull this together, to work with that KHON production staff and to kind of, they're like, is this going to go or is this isn't going to go? When you don't know if it's going to go, it's quite a feat to put together a production. And they had camera angles, as you mentioned, the drones, there was water shots, there were beach and land angles. And it was a good broadcast. What perhaps made it not great was there were some hiccups, which I think are natural, or like I said, when you only have a few days to pull together a production, you're going to miss some stuff. So there were some graphics that probably could have been better. They didn't really keep us, the end user, up to date with scoring or who was in position to actually win the event. Of course, the thing about the Eddie is that all you need is four rides, and you can get that on the last heat of the day and win the event.
yeah.
But it would have been nice to have a little bit more insight into the scoring and who was doing well. They did their best to kind of keep us up to date, but there weren't any graphics that sort of like summarized it. And if there were, I didn't see them. But the other thing that I thought could have been done better was telling Eddie Aikau's story. I didn't feel like there was enough backstory about Eddie himself. I felt that needed a little bit more amplification. We have, in fact, seen that in past Eddies where they had put together a cool little reel on who Eddie was and why he's important and what he did and why his spirit lives on. I think that next time it would be cool if they had a little package about Eddie that they kind of, ran in between.
Totally agree. For the record, or anybody who does want to know that story, ESPN's 30 for 30 did an excellent episode on it, on Eddie, probably 8 years ago. And I think you can find it in its entirety on YouTube. So go there,
Good,
see that.
good call.
And I did for the look up the rankings for the event just to make it official. Landon McNamara's first place, Mason Host second, Billy Kemper third, Jamie O'Brien fourth, Nathan Florence fifth, Nick Lamb sixth, Luke Shepardson seven, Kai Lenny eight, Koa Rothman 9, and Zeke Lau in 10th.
All right. Well, tip the cap to all of the surfers. And it was just a great event. I know that I was engaged with it all on my big screen in my viewing area at my home, and um, it was
Well,
fascinating.
Landon, it should be stated too, Landon McNamara is the first goofy footer to ever win the event. Which we should also do a little breakdown of that. The first winner ever, there's now been 11. The first winner ever is Denton Miyamura, who was only 24 years old at the time. Clyde, and that was 1985.
Hold on, because I believe that that event was at Sunset Beach. I want to say
Oh,
the first Eddie happened. I could be wrong, but I think it went down at Sunset Beach.
why? Do you remember?
Again, I could be wrong. We need to double check this because it could have been a situation where it might have been at YMA. I mean, I mean, you'd think we should be able to Google Denton Miyamura at the Eddie, you know? Let's see if we can do that.
Well, while you're looking it up, I'll give you the historical breakdown. 86 the following year, Clyde Aikau won at the age of 30.
Yeah.
And Clyde was still competing in this event up until 2016, I think he competed, which is kind of incredible. Keone Downing won
Yep.
in 1990. Noah Johnson won in 1999. Ross Clark Jones in 2001. Kelly Slater in 2002. Bruce Irons won in 2004. Greg Long won in 2009. John Florence in 2016. Luke Shepardson, of course, last year, 2023. And then Liam McNamara, first goofy footer this year.
Yeah. Denton Miyamura won in 1984 at Sunset Beach. And then they decided to move the entire thing to Waimea Bay the next time they ran it, which was in 86, as you mentioned, with Clyde Aikau.
Got it. Um, and speaking of how great last year was and the sentimental story of Luke Shepardson winning as a lifeguard, this sentimental kind of heart tugging thing in this event was just Liam McNamara being the contest director and hearing him speak about the pride he has for his son winning this event. Like I saw Liam on Instagram later that night, just bowled over. And then in the following days, I think 3 or 4 days later, he posted something about it again. But in explained some of his son's ups and downs, struggles as it relates to pro surfing and other things, and stepping away from professional surfing, focusing on music. And so to be able to come back and win an event like this just really solidifies that McNamara family legacy in the world of surfing.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, the family legacy was already super solid. This just adds to it. So, congratulations to the McNamara family. It's really a wonderful story.
It really is. Yeah. Phenomenal stuff. Phenomenal event.
So, David, on top of that, then like the following day, a lot of guys, Peter Mel, Jojo Roper, probably some others, flew to San Francisco and paddled out in the largest Mavericks that's ever been seen or filmed or surfed. I don't think that's a stretch. I think and I wasn't there. I'm not here to tell you that. I'm just telling you what I've heard from the people that were there that day, the following day. And I watched some of it, and I'm sure you've seen it, and most of our listeners have seen footage of it, and it was just like cartoonishly massive, just freight trains breaking so far out. I don't even know if words do it justice.
I feel like I'm living in some AI generated world at this point because I feel like every year we're on here, we have the conversation of that was the best pipeline I've ever seen. That was the best pipe masters I've ever seen.
I
Everything
know.
just gets better and bigger and crazier and more well documented. And we're at the point now where I agree with you. That day, Eddie ends. Next day, everybody's at Mavericks. I'm like, how they all get there in time? How do they have the right boards? How do they have everything planned out in advance? And then the imagery itself looks artificial. It's just freakish. It's a little tiny human on this giant wave, and it's incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing. And a couple of rides Peter Mel got a deep, dark barrel. Um, and some other guys, I think Lucas, how do you say Lucas's
Luca Padua.
Padua? Jojo got some insane rides. There's a guy who, another name that I don't know how to pronounce, a Santa Cruz local. Um, can you help me with his name? It starts with an
A-
A.
Aloe Slabier.
Yeah, Alos Labir. See, that's a name you're for sure going to butcher if you try to spit it out without somebody telling you how to pronounce it. Aloe Slabir got friggin'. I mean, I don't know how big are these waves. I tried to measure these waves. I'm sure that you could. I don't want to say rationalize. Um, you could suggest that these were waves of over 100 feet, in my opinion.
I know. You really could. You can make an argument for it.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for. You could make an argument, a valid argument.
I've almost stopped feeling the need to engage in that conversation,
Yeah.
because it seems so simple, right? Why couldn't you just measure it? But if the true experts who are spending time in the water there and doing it for decades can't come up with a definitive number, then
Yeah.
who am I to try to figure it out? So I just kind of give up. And for anybody who doesn't kind of understand the details here, it's very difficult to find the trough of the wave to measure from the bottom to the top to the crest. And it's constantly kind of undulating. So it would be difficult to pick, you'd have to figure out what the biggest moment was, I suppose. But the point is that the trough and the crest aren't necessarily the best measure of a wave. There can be a lot more power, there can be thickness, there can be girthiness. And so just measuring the height of the wave is almost a disservice. Um, that so factoring in, you'd have to come up with some sort of magnitude type of measurement of a wave, and then that gets very difficult. So it's a complicated thing, but I agree with you. Like that Aloe Slabier wave, one of his rides, I think it was the biggest wave I've ever seen ridden. I'd have to compare it side by side, but kind of the biggest, the girthiest, the most impressive, the most challenging. Um, I think he might have it. If the Guinness book is going to chime in on this, I think that would be the winner.
Yeah. I mean, we go through this discussion about Nazare versus Mavericks, and, you know, Mavericks, it's like a 500-yard wave. You know
It's
what I mean?
gnarly. Yeah.
I mean, it is just radicals. But regardless, you're right. Tip of the cap to all of those guys. And I mentioned in one of my posts on Instagram, I get it if you're, 20 years old, 30 years old, reaching 40 years old. The guys like Peter Mel
I
and
know.
Ross Clark Jones that are close to 60 years old that are surfing these waves. Um, I don't know how they do it. It's just
It's
mind blowing from a physical standpoint. Like at some point, these guys are dedicated in just a radical way. Um, and so
it
I don't tip of the cap to the older guys that are still out there.
I could not agree more. Ross Clark Jones is 58 and Pete Mel is 55. And Ross Clark Jones was surfing the eddy without an inflation vest.
Guy's so gnarly.
And why wouldn't you wear one? Other
I
than it's
know.
just old school and maybe he's never needed one, or he's never worn one, so he doesn't need one. Um, but it seems to be not intrusive or not cumbersome. Like it seems to be like they're pretty uh, dialed in at this point. But yeah, remarkable stuff. So the idea of paddling Waimea without a vest is crazy at 58 years old.
Yeah, it is. I don't know what to make of that, but I think it's one of those things that once you try one, you would never go back,
Right.
and so who knows? Maybe
Well,
he had an incident where he felt like it was dangerous to him to have an inflation vest. I want to think there was an incident in Nazare, right, with Ross where he almost died, and I again I don't want to butcher the story, but I know that He was wearing an inflation vest then, so
Oh, he was. Okay.
I believe he was.
Well, you mentioned the two names, Luca Padua and Alois Libier, who they're a tow team partnership, and they are in their 20s, early 20s. And it seems to me that they've been really dedicated their lives to this in terms of training. I know Lucas spends time at Laird Hamilton's doing his whatever his workout is called with the breath holding and the weight training and the
What
sauna and
is
the
it
ice
called?
bath.
What is it? What is that
X,
workout called?
he has a name for it. It's like X. I don't want to confuse it with a different workout.
Yeah.
Is it XPT or something like that?
Who knows? All right.
I mean, it's like a list of celebrities that go there and like does this thing and world-class athletes all together.
Yeah.
And so Luke is a part of that program. And you look at those guys, they're unbelievably fit. They're super dedicated. They're taking it very, very seriously, basically. And so
You
that
know
is
what they need?
how what
They need shots of olive oil. I mean, come on.
I was going to
And
say
some
drink.
AG1. By the way, they need some
Yeah.
AG1.
I'm gonna say drinkag1.com/surf is what they need. They're probably already on it now that I think about it. How could they
Yeah.
be performing at this level without it is the question.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
but look, they're in their 20s, and so um, easier to bounce back from things, easier to build muscle mass. Once you get into your 40s and your 50s, that AG1 is going to be helping you with your gut health and all sorts of other things. So
Yeah. No, for sure. I mean,
probiotics.
you got it. It's so weird because, the waves have been big here in California as well. And I personally I get all this anxiety about, and I realize it's mostly about the crowd.
Oh, really?
It's not the waves, it's the crowd. And I was talking to a buddy at yoga yesterday about this, and it's like the bottom line is that it's hard to do battle with 25-year-olds that are just in the top of their game, that are just paddling circles and are on short boards and can be underneath the lip, and um, it's just tough. But what is really difficult is that at this age, if you don't stay in the game, you're knocked out of the game.
Yeah.
Like you can't just be, it's not like when you're 25 and you can just like skip a season and then come right back into it. Like I feel like you got to be in the game to stay in the game. Once you're out of the game at this age, it's it's like a current that like just takes you away and you can never paddle back to it. And so it's this this friction and tension between one's ego and one's desire and need to want to surf at a high level, and the ability to realize, hey, you know what? You're getting older, and it everybody gets older, and it's time to move on to a different phase in one's life, or not, or you keep on biting the, chomping on the bit and going, I'm holding on for one last. And from my standpoint, I look at it like I want to go to Indo and surf really good, perfect rights in warm water. And frankly, I can do that without competing in Southern California surf situations, as long as I swim and surf regularly. And it doesn't mean that I have to be top alpha dog at Swami's or wherever.
Yeah.
But there's an internal struggle within me, I guess is what I'm saying. And nobody wants to hear about it. I know it's boring pod, but it occurs each and every year. And so I'm going to speak about it.
I think it's relatable, actually.
Yeah.
Um, it's a tale as old as time. Whether
Yes.
you were fighting for your food in a prehistoric scenario or fighting for a wave at Swami's, that's what it is. But I'm somewhere in between where it's also not really the waves that my anxiety is around, but it's the amount of paddling when there's that much swell in the water, that's where I feel the effects is just or when I'm even looking at the surf. It's just like, oh God, there's going to be so much paddling, and I'm not as fit as I was a decade ago, and certainly not surfing as much as I was a decade ago. So all of that is going to wear me out. But it also that's where all of I that where it feels great when you get out of the water after that, and you're like, man, that was exactly what I needed, as it turns out.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Well, you know what?
well, yeah,
Silly little it's really kind of silly when you state it like it's a tale as old as time, like fighting for food. And now here we are. We've advanced so much as a society that my anxiety isn't about food, but it's about dealing with and 75 guys in the water and catching a few waves. It's kind of like really like don't you have any other purpose in your life? Like, you know, you know,
you do have other purpose in your life, but look, you're right. It's not a reflection of your life's choices. It's a reflection of society. We have gotten to the point where our Maslow's hierarchy of needs are all sated. You have
yes.
shelter guaranteed, you have food guaranteed, easy access to all of it. And so you start looking for other things that'll stimulate you and actually, interestingly, recreate the exact scenario that you crave from the vestige of your ancestors.
Oh, wow. That's fascinating. Like
It's why you have to put
subconsciously I'm recreating the need to go and that's
That's why you
that's
have to put peanut butter in your dog's Kong toy to make
uh
them fight for it. They have to go and wrestle with that thing and try to get their tongue in the crack and open it up because putting food in the bowl is not chasing the animal down to them. They want to recreate that chase.
wow, look at
That's what
you.
you're doing, Scott,
You're
every day.
enlightening me. Well,
Well, you mentioned at the top of the show Mavericks, or no, I'm sorry, not Mavericks. Oh, Jaws. So Jaws has had a run of 5 days straight, basically, of like flawless, insane. Again, you look at the imagery and you're like, is that photoshopped? Because
I know.
it looks kind of better than any other Jaws I've ever seen, and that guy's deeper than any other version I've ever seen. It seems like almost every ride now, somebody's taking off and pulling into the pocket and getting a little pocket ride barrel and coming out of it. Uh, it's next level.
It is. It's well, one of the things you mentioned earlier today was how clean the conditions were at Waimea, and the conditions in Hawaii have just been flawless, like just like
Yeah,
wonderful, offshore trades that have just been perfect scenario for the swell being this big and being able to paddle, catch the waves on, with your own force, your own power. I noticed Albie Layer posted something like the day before the swell on his Instagram, basically like, "Hey, tow teams, give us a break. Let the paddle guys catch waves, And the next day it was, I don't think it was paddleable. I think it was tow in only that day. I'm not sure. Maybe Albie did get a few earlier in the morning before the wind got on it too much. Again, I don't want to misrepresent what went down out there, but it was cartoonish, and there's a lot of great footage of it, and it's a joy to be able to watch it.
totally agree. I wanted to offer, I don't know, did you have any other segment or can I go must see moment?
No, but let me just take a quick break. You know what? We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
So my
And we're
must
back.
welcome back, Scott. My must see moment
Yeah.
presented by Trees Wax. It's called Trees Wax, Scott, because it's petroleum free. It's made from trees and rocks, and it's surf wax, and it's performance based. I mean, it's every bit as
Sticky as
good.
shit.
Yeah, exactly. Uh, treeswax.com. But Mason Ho in the shore break hitting the backwash is my must see
Oh
moment.
my God. That was insane.
You talked about the guys getting tubed on the back on the shore break, which Mason, I'm sure, was looking for. But this was the world's biggest backwash that's ever existed, and he went straight into it. He got ejected 30 feet in the air, 40
Oh
feet.
my
Whatever
God.
the height of the largest wave was out the back is the height that Mason Ho got ejected into the air in the shore break. It was freaking wild.
It was. That too was almost like AI generated. It was just so crazy.
It was insane. So it's probably on Mason's Instagram or something, but I'll repost that. I'll post it on the website. It was just remarkable. So
Yes.
go
Good
check
call.
that. Um, I also want to remind people our El Salvador trip. I haven't checked the head count in since before Christmas, but Last I knew, there was 3 or 4 spots available. So we're going to El Salvador April 1st through the 7th. Punta Mango is the surf spot, and there's a hotel right there called Hotel Los Mangos. And we're going for 6 nights, and you can book a room by yourself for about 1,700 bucks, or I mean, a single room. You book it through Waterways, but if you do it by as a single room, it's about 1,700 bucks. If you do it as a shared room, it's about 1,100, and that gets you 6 nights and 3 meals a day, and transport to and from the airport, and transport all around to different surf spots. Scott and I did this earlier this year in 2024, and we surfed 3+ times a day, got great waves, kind of chest to head high surf every day, surfed a variety of spots, and had a phenomenal time. The hotel's great, the food's great, and the listeners who came on the trip were just made it incredible.
Yeah, I agree. That was perhaps the best part, was just the fellowship with the listeners and getting to meet everybody. And it was sweet for sure.
Made a really great, I think the recap video that one of the listeners, Alex Hemingway, made of the trip encapsulates everybody's personalities in a really good way too. He
Yeah.
interviewed a lot of them. So if you want to see that video and kind of get a taste for the trip, you can find it on YouTube if you search Surf Splendor in El Salvador. And then obviously you get a feel for the waves. But we're going back, listener trip. We want you to come, and can't wait. It's going to be fun. And just email. So Waterways is booking it, organizing all of it for us. So you can get a hold of Waterways directly by going through their website, or you can email me, surfsplendor@gmail, and then I'll connect you with Chris at Waterways, who will give you all the details.
David, what was your best gift this Christmas? What did you receive that you're most excited about?
Man, not much.
Olive oil.
Yeah. I say not much. I received a number of things, but none of them left. I mean, none of them are meaningful. You know what I mean?
Oh my
Ultimately,
God.
what
Whoa.
I mean to say, Scott, is the
Yeah.
quality time with family is the meaningful
Uh,
part. The
uh,
gifts are just, physical
okay. You know
things.
what? Way to
Uh,
save the moment there.
no, it's truly what I was trying to say. I spent over 3 days hosting, cooking, going to another house, having dinners, and it's kind of still ongoing. I've got
Yeah.
stuff going on this weekend too. And so
Yeah.
it really is the most wonderful time of the year. It's my favorite time of the year. Having a 3-year-old now and kind of seeing it through his eyes is adds to the joy of it. But I really relish it. I'm probably going to need the next week of recovery time to just take naps and things like that, because I've been up till midnight often, and then right up early in the morning. And like I said, tons and tons of cooking, but it's been the best. It's like being on vacation perpetually.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
What about you?
Um, I got handkerchiefs.
It is hilarious that that's your favorite gift. You've mentioned that, like, I think this is the second year actually
Yeah.
that you love handkerchiefs.
Well, here's the thing is that I'll let you in on something is that when I was younger, I abused my body to the point that my nose runs constantly. I don't have a cold, just my nose drips. My nose drips. And so these handkerchiefs come in handy. That's why they're called
Man,
handkerchiefs. They're handy.
Lee, how about that's a lesson for those young folk out there listening, if there are any young folk listening,
Yes.
is that
I doubt it.
I doubt it too. Is that you think you're having a good time and that you are invincible, but you're only hurting yourself. The future
This
self
is
is
the
gonna
worst segment ever.
future self is gonna look back and be like, God damn, why'd you stay up so late?
Yeah, exactly. Holy mackerel. It was the 80s, folks. Okay. Well, look,
I
David.
thought I thought you were gonna say the best part of your holiday was the Christmas cards you received.
Oh, your card was wonderful. We receive hundreds of Christmas cards, and it's an annual tradition at our houses that we don't open any of them until Christmas morning, which is kind of a cool thing. You might take
Yeah,
that on as a
I
family.
like it.
You gather all your cards, and then as a family, you go through them, and then we judge the living shit out of them. We put them all out there, and we go, okay, which one's the best? some of them that you can tell they like took a selfie and mailed it in. Like we're very specific about which is the best Christmas card. And David, your card was in the running. It was between your card and my nephew's card, first or second. Your card was incredible. And out of the hundreds that we receive, to get second place against a family member was congratulations to you and Lauren and Austin.
It was an honor. I could not believe we made it into the top two list. And I
Yeah.
agree. Your nephew should have got first. Ours wasn't as good as theirs. But Scott sent a video over. It's like a 90-second video of him and his, I don't know if your wife and daughter even knew you were filming, but of filming the entire interaction of them trying to pick a winner. And we were in stitches laughing about it. We couldn't believe that we were in the position. We didn't even know we were in a contest, but we couldn't believe that we were in the top two. And it was just the tension to figure out who was going to be selected as the winner was thrilling for those 90 seconds. And I was honored to lose, actually.
Well, you're a winner. We appreciate your good sportsmanship around it. I figured you would enjoy it. That's why
Oh,
I said it.
totally. No, I almost posted it on Instagram. I loved
Oh,
it. That might have been
glad
the
you didn't.
greatest gift.
I'm glad you didn't.
But now it makes me really want to take the card much more seriously for next year and bring my A game.
Well, I mean, you brought your A game. I mean, it was a really good card. The key is here, first of all, you have to have professional photographers. You have to think it through. There's a lot to a good Christmas card. You can't just friggin', it's got to be. We're tough judges,
You really are.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the ones who send a full progress report of the entire family?
We're torn, like it depends what kind, like how deep it is. Our big thing is what we don't want is self-aggrandizement, like telling us how great everything is. Like to
Right.
us, that's like no one wants to read how great your life is,
Yeah.
And so there's a fine line. It can't be a little bit of update is fine, but there's a fine line there.
Totally. Good call. Yeah, I don't get a lot of those anymore, but I do remember when I was a kid that we'd get like these newsletters from a
Yeah.
family, and it's like so and so's off to college and John got a promotion this year, or hit a home run or whatever it is. And I was just like, what? Why are those kids so much better than we are?
And of course, everyone gets cards from people where you're like, why are we getting a card from who? Like, no one knows who they are. We're like, who are these people?
Went to the wrong address.
No, it was sent to us. We're not sure who they are.
Awesome. Well, and
Okay.
now you got to leave. The thing is, the reason why we open our cards when we receive them is to enjoy them throughout the month. So now you got to keep those cards up for all of January.
Yes, exactly. Well, all right. Look, David, we've said a lot. Until next time, adios and aloha.
All right. Thank you very much.